Welcome back to The Other 51, the podcast where we get your favorite writers to come on and talk about their craft, their work, the pop culture they're obsessed with, and everything else in between. I am Brian Moritz. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here this month, our first episode of 2026, and it is that time of the year. I mean, we do it all the time, but where we have one of our original friends of the show, our favorite writers, author of a new series of stories, a new mom, just a lot of fun stuff, and a lot of good stuff to talk to with our friend Alysa Auriemma. Welcome back to the show.
I'm back.
Not menacing at all. That's great.
No, not menacing at all.
It is fantastic to have you with so much to talk about and so much I know you want to talk about. We've got a lot of time saved at the end for a certain TV show slash book series that I know you have a lot of thoughts on, um, which is great. But first of all, just wanted to welcome back here, and we can talk about the new start with the collection of stories that you put out on Kindle just a few weeks ago as we're recording this, the Archives of Thera, stories from the stories from of the Kinborn.
Yes.
So they are awesome. I read them. It's a very quick read, which is not an insult. They're just short little stories. Um, Tell me a little bit about where these stories come from and kind of how they fit into your greater literary extended universe.
So they actually came from the drafting process, actually. So, I mean, a lot of people that are listening to this show and have been on the show are writers and know that so much of writing is rewriting and drafting and writing a draft and getting rid of it or getting rid of 50% of it and then starting over again. So my draft for my book, All Daughters Rise, had a lot of you might want to say like apocryphal material of just stuff. And because I was trying to build the world out. So I was trying to build this overarching world with all of this stuff, and I wanted to make sure it all worked, and I wanted to make sure that the relationships were complex. But you realize very quickly that you can't put all of that in the book, unless you either do appendices,
Mhm.
like a J.R.R. Tolkien sort of thing, or you have to incorporate them in some other way. So I put them aside and I have a whole Drive doc that's just all the deleted stuff.
Oh wow.
Because I really believe, even if you don't think it's good, I believe in really not deleting your stuff. I believe in, unless it's, that it's never going to see the light of day, you I just copy all of it and I put it into a almost a garbage bin of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just leave it there, and it's ADR deleted stuff. And I've been in the process of trying to write the second book and just kind of getting stuck and I needed a way back in to the world, as it were. And I had the story with Bianca and Domi. I had that whole thing almost completely done,
Okay.
and that had just been sitting there. And I originally, when I first started writing All Daughters Rise, I wanted it to switch perspectives to a lot of different characters, which is why you get Laura's perspective a little bit. And that's why you get a little bit of Eamon's perspective when Sabrine kind of jumps into his mind. And then you get you get some of those different perspectives. But then I sort of pulled back from that because unless you're doing a big sweeping Game of Thrones style thing, it's going to be really hard to keep all of that straight. Uh, and I really felt myself gravitating more towards just Sabrine's perspective. And I'm not really, we can talk about this later, but I'm not the biggest fan of switching POVs. So, but we'll get into that at another time, at another point. But so I had this whole thing that was written from Bianca's perspective. And I liked it a lot because it gave us a sense of who Bianca was, who Domi was, what their relationship started as. It's a commentary on class in that system. And it just had no place in All Daughters Rise. It just did not fit. So I put it into the draft folder and I said, I'll figure out something. Maybe it'll go in the second book. Maybe it'll go somewhere. And then a couple weeks before Christmas, and then I also wanted to at some point write the origin of Gabe and Eamon's story. I wanted to do that. I knew it was never going to be a full book because I just didn't have it in me to do a full book from that perspective. I just didn't have it. But I knew I wanted to write a little ficclet or a little snippet or something. So it was a couple weeks before Christmas, and I just thought, why don't I just put together like a duet, two stories, and I just put it out there for Christmas, and center it around. I mean, it's not really centered around Christmas. The second story is kind of around the winter season, but I thought that'll be a nice little treat for people who are wondering where I've been because I published All Daughters Rise literally 4 years ago. Which is crazy to think about, but I so it honestly is a way to get back into the world, and B, hi, I'm alive. I swear I'm still writing. I've just been busy with a ton of other projects, but I swear I still care about this world. This world is not abandoned. All Daughters Die is coming at some point. It's just, and I mentioned this last time I was on the podcast. That book is going to be really hard for me to write for a multitude of reasons because it's going to be pretty dark and sad. And it is no surprise I've really pivoted to rom-coms lately. So, but I really did want to give the people that really loved All Daughters Rise something. So I put together this little duet of stories and just threw it out there. And so far the response has been great. Everybody just thinks it's very cute, that was the idea because the side stories in All Daughters Rise are just really cute, and the origins of those relationships are very sweet. And I just thought, okay, here's some sweet little love stories. And I wrote I think I said something along the lines of in the dedication to anybody who wants a good little love story. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much how it came about. But that Bianca Domi story has been in my drafts for, I'm gonna say, 6 or 7 years.
Oh,
Like
wow.
that's been in there for a very long time. And with very little changes. I mean, I went and edited it, but just very little changes.
What was it like? Because I know it was like for me as a reader to kind of get reacquainted with the world and like the universe of All Daughters Rise and this world. What was it like for you as a writer, especially the Eamon Gabriel story, to kind of get back into writing in the story? I know you've been working on the other book, but like
Hmm.
coming back into it after not being in it or not being as deep in it as others, was it, to use the cliche, is it riding a bike, like you just kind of fell into it? Was it a little awkward for you to kind of get, like, remember, like how did that process work for you of getting back into this is what the world is, this is the voice, this is the vibe of this universe?
Uh, it was it was harder with it's funny because I just said that the Bianca Domi stuff was written a while ago. So I think that one was harder to get it back into because I just never was in Bianca's perspective ever in the story. And that's also why I didn't really move into her perspective when I did the book, because she was just a hard nut to crack. I just didn't, I could never really get a sense of her. And I think that's something I'm gonna probably correct when we get into All Daughters Die. I'm gonna try and unpack her a little bit more. Um, she's got a really cool backstory that I want to flesh out more. Um, but when it comes to Domi and Eamon, they are so easy to write for me. They're just breezy and smart, and Eamon's thought process is very easy to get into. So getting into that story, and that story is called Silver and Gold. Um, that story flew. I I was at first kind of nervous because like I said, I had tried to do something with them previously and it just didn't really work. I felt more confident when I jumped in the middle of their story as opposed to starting from the beginning.
Well,
So I got into that. And once I nailed the idea of he hates him, but he actually doesn't, and he thinks that the other guy hates him. And I had set up in All Daughters Rise that Gabe had been working on his prejudice towards werewolves for a really long time before he met Eamon, and Eamon kind of spurred more growth. So once that clicked into my head, and I also really wanted a moment of Gabe seeing Eamon in his wolf form. That was really, really clear to me. And I wanted to get back to the garden because in All Daughters Rise, there's a scene where Eamon and Sabrine go through the gardens and Eamon's just talking. They're just talking and getting to know each other. And that's one of my favorite scenes I think I've ever written because just, just two people in this situation, don't know each other very well, but they're bonding. And Eamon talking about how it's easy to be with Gabe because it's all worth it. And so I wanted to go, okay, how do we get from there? How do we get from this beginning to that end? How do we get there? And there's a lot of time in between the two. But the minute I clicked onto I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, actually I don't, then it just became really fun.
mhm.
Then it was just like then it felt like a rom-com and it felt very rom-com-y to write it, you know. It was like I hate you, no I don't sort of feeling. And then Seb was super easy to write in that story too because she just is sitting there like you two idiots, like you need to figure it out. um so I it was like riding a bike for that one. That one I was able to jump into very, very quickly. The Bianca Domi story, because it's so much older, was it felt very much like stepping into a time machine back into a period of my writing and a period of my life that for better and for worse, like doesn't exist anymore. So it was this feeling of oh, this is how I used to write, and this is how the vibe used to be. And how do I weave that in with what I do now? So that one felt a little more fragmented to me. Whereas the second one I cranked that out and I cranked out that first draft very quickly
That
because
that
it was just fun.
yeah, that one. That's what I was gonna say. That's the second story, especially felt very fun, and those characters just felt so lovable and fully formed and easy. And yeah, it was a total enemies to lovers rom com thing. That was really great.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier about switching POVs and not being the biggest fan of it. So is that a as a consumer of media and these, is that as a writer thing? What is the walk me through that those thoughts for you on that?
It became a thing that I didn't like to write. I'm not I don't hate it when I read it. And it's funny, the books that we're going to be talking about in a bit, they switch POVs. I don't hate it from a reading consumer perspective. I really don't like writing it because it takes me, maybe it's my acting training, I think, but I'm so used to being in one perspective and then uncovering or unpacking what's happening around me as opposed to now I'm going to jump into somebody else's head. Now, there are times where that works. And I'm saying this and I'm kind of being hypocritical because in All Daughters Rise, there is a change in POV, right? So there is a change in perspective from Sabrine to Laura every once in a while. And I start the book from Laura's perspective. Um, and I was because I wanted to get further into her head and at first I thought I was going to write the book about Laura, honestly. And then it just all changed. So I think once I realized, oh, this story isn't actually from this person's perspective, it's from the other person's perspective, I still kind of felt like, well, what's going on in this person's head? What's making her tick? I kind of want to see what's going on here because she was so secretive and she had so much going on that I was like, what's going on in this person's head? So that's why I did the kind of dueling POVs. I'm I may have to do it again for All Daughters Die just to continue that style, but everything that I'm writing forward from other stuff is probably not going to be dual POV just because I like having it from one perspective and seeing what happens from that person's perspective. And then maybe, as a bonus, I'll publish stuff from sometimes authors will say, "Oh, there's an extra deleted scene. It's that scene from this part of the book, but from another character's perspective."
Hmm.
I think that's very fun
Yeah.
because it's a little, ooh, here's what they were thinking during that moment. But I don't like it. I don't know. I think it kind of starts with this character rewinding the scene and thinking this is how I was feeling during that. And I just feel like it's reiterating stuff that happened previously. And I was like, no, keep going forward.
Mhm.
But a lot of the rom-coms I read and a lot of the romance novels I read are dual POV. So I don't hate it from that. Like, I'll read it. It's just really hard for me to write.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
So when we were kind of getting ready to and trying to schedule this to record, one of the uh, one of the things that you mentioned that you wanted to talk about is writing as a new mom, which you
Mm.
are, and writing postpartum, and also you work, you're a teacher, you're a coach, you've got a lot of projects that you're working on. And so I don't really have a set question on this. I'm just kind of gonna let you, where your head is at and where you're thinking on that and what that's been like for you doing all of this and balancing all this.
Yeah, so since it's so funny because I was trying to think back to the last time you and I talked on the podcast, and the last time we talked, it was right before I was getting married. And so between the time you and I have gotten together for a pod discussion, I've gotten married and I've had a kid. So and my kid is almost 4 months old. Um and having it's been a full year of being pregnant, then having the baby, becoming a mom, right? It's funny. A year ago today was the day I found out I was pregnant.
Aw,
Isn't that crazy?
that's amazing.
I just thought about that. I thought about that today because I was going back through my phone and looking at some stuff. And I went to last year at this time and I just saw, I was like, whoa, was happening at this time last year. It's crazy how much your life can change in a year, da da da. As for the writing, while I was pregnant, it was this feeling of what do I do? Like, what's going to happen? What's my life going to be like? It's going to all change. It's going to be all different and new. And maybe what if the baby is a difficult baby? What if the baby is this? What if it's that? What if it's the other thing? And you're worried about complications and you're worried about, complications with you and postpartum and worries about postpartum depression and da da da. And then I have the baby, and thankfully, none of that really came to pass. The baby is completely healthy. I recovered very, very well. I was lucky. I had a very easy delivery, very easy postpartum process. Aside from, all the things that happen when you're postpartum, the crash, the emotional crash and all of that, that happened, but it's nothing serious. Um, Nobody tells you how boring it is to have a baby. Um, And I'm not saying that in a pejorative sense. It is just a boring thing because you're waiting to be let out into the world again almost, but you also want to protect the nesting time. And you can't go out anywhere until, well, I made it a choice to not really go anywhere until she got her shots and everything. So for about a month and a half, 2 months, I was stuck at home. So what I was doing during that time was thinking. When I was able to, I read, I was listening to podcasts, I watched a lot of TV, because you're just feeding this, your whole life becomes keep this person alive. Put make sure they sleep, make sure they poop, make sure they eat. Every 2 hours, you go again and you do the bottles and it becomes so monotonous. And it becomes this situation of, okay, so now what do I do? Now I've got these times where then it starts to back up a little bit, and then you get more time back. And suddenly I just had all of this. I don't even know if it was this creative spark or I don't know what it was, but it was this feeling of, oh, now I'm ready to write again. And I hadn't really written for like a year. I really hadn't felt the pull to. Just for a variety of reasons. When you're pregnant, you just at a certain point it's just survival. You just are just trying to make it
Yeah.
to your due date without killing everyone around you. I don't know. And I had an easy pregnancy, so I don't even know when people have complications. I don't even know how that works out. Bless anybody who has a child. But I suddenly got this urge to write because I was at home. And I don't think that that's true for everybody that has a baby and has that kind of career. But after about a month, it became, I have all this time, which is hilarious when you have an infant to think you have time. But I did. I got lucky. Like I said, I have a very good baby. And that's when I started getting the itch to write again. So writing postpartum for me has been the moments of time I carve for myself. Like I get to sit and do things, and it wasn't always writing. I was knitting a lot. I was when I was able to I was going for walks. I was listening, like I said, I was watching a lot of TV. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. So it was those moments that I could carve out for myself. And when I carved out those moments, the urge to be creative just came at me. Um, and that's a weird, crunchy way of putting it, of like the creative juices just were flowing. And I don't know if that's a postpartum thing or what, but I just felt this urge to be creative. And I also get a lot of, I don't know if I want to say I get inspiration from my kid, but I feel like sitting there with her, feeding her, and just like in the quiet of the morning, you just start thinking about stuff.
Mhm.
And I was also doing a lot of reading. So the reading was inspiring me to come up with my own stuff. Like, oh, I'm reading this. I really like this, or I don't like this. Um, and it was also coming out from being this thing that's building another person for a year. And now I'm back to me and who am I, right? It's those existential things of now I don't have this thing that I'm building. Now I'm back to myself for the first time in almost 2 years. What do I do
Mhm.
with that? So I think that's been the interesting thing. You're a parent. Your life completely changes,
Mhm.
but it also stays the
It
same.
is. Yeah, I was gonna say it changes in a way, but also like, my daughter is 15 now, which I know. But it is very much your life changes, but also you bring this new person along with your life. Like it changes, but now you're doing your thing, but now they're there with you, and it can change. It does change a lot, but now you've got this new person with you, and they're just a part of it. They're just there, and this is a very ineloquent way of saying it, but it's just like it's one of those things where your life changes, but also you're still you, and finding writing or finding whatever it is that kind of helps keep you tethered to being you is such a huge part of being as successful as any of us can be at this parenting gig.
Exactly. That is exactly it. It's finding your way back to yourself.
Hmm.
Um, there was two moments where that really came to life for me in this postpartum process. One was the first time because like I run half marathons. I'm very athletic-ish. Um, but after you give birth, you have to put a moratorium on that for at least 3 weeks. Like you can't do anything. And mental health wise, that was really hard for me because I use it as a de-stressor and I use it as my me time, right? And so when I went to my 6 week appointment and they said, okay, you're cleared for all activity you could do pre-pregnancy, I went to a physical therapist, like a pelvic floor therapist, and she put me on a treadmill to see where I was at. And it was this moment of, yes, I'm not back to where I was, not by a long shot, because I took a long break, but it felt like, okay, I'm coming back to myself. I'm coming back. I'm starting to feel like me again. And then the second moment was starting to draft out these short stories because it was the way to take the training wheels off
Hmm. It's a good way of
and
putting it. Yeah.
to really just because I had to do something. I was just, you know what? Let's take the training wheels off and push you down the hill. And now it's rolling, and I just am on the ride,
Hmm.
you know? So that's been really helpful. And that just kickstarted all of it. So it's, I don't want to say like I've been in a manic state of creativity, but it's more of like uh, more like a compulsive, I just want to produce stuff
Hmm.
sort of sort of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. And your point about taking the kid for the ride with you is really apt because it is about, in many ways, how does this little person fit into the life that you have?
Hmm.
Like right now, I'm sitting here talking to you, and she's right here in her little bouncer. And I'm just every once in a while like going and checking in on her, but I'm still doing my thing.
Hmm.
And if she starts to get fussy and starts to get hungry, then it's like, all right, then I'll go do that.
Hmm.
And learning how to pivot.
Hmm.
I think that's been really helpful too.
I remember I was doing my master's thesis, I think, when my daughter was a newborn, and I was doing an interview with a reporter, and she came with me, and like she was sitting right there, and she started to get fussy, and we had to pause the interview because I had to change the diaper, and you just do that, and off we go, and you keep going with it.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, this is the point of the show where regular listeners know I ask the my guests to talk about the best thing that they've read lately because good writing is, to be a good writer, you need to consume great media. I know better from our conversations before this to ask you what the best thing you've consumed is. So I'm just going to say the two words and let you go for as long as you want to. Heated Rivalry.
Oh man. No, it's so funny. You were saying that your wife's really into it
Hmm.
too. So I it, every part of what is going on with Heated Rivalry has been one of the greatest surprises in my fangirl life. I am truly stunned by it in a way that is both um, like I'm overjoyed by it and I'm also very confused by it, but in a great
Hmm.
way.
So,
So
did you read the books before the TV adaptation?
okay, so here's the really fun background thing. So you may know this, but so Rachel Reed, who is the author of the Game Changer series, she wrote she was starting to come up with the first book in the series, which is in Heated Rivalry. It's episode 3. It's the Scott and Kip story. Uh and that's pretty much in the show. Episode 3 is pretty much verbatim most of that book, Game Changer, with a big climactic moment in that story being what happens in episode 5. But you don't know that that's the climactic moment for that group of that story until you get to that book. But so I had read the fan fiction version of that story. So she has said, and I'm going to take her for her word. She has said that she made it into fan fiction because she didn't know that Archive of Our Own, AO3, which is the biggest now fan fiction archive on the internet, and it's really has collected archives from all different places that are now defunct, and has put it's fandom preservation, which is really, really important. And she didn't realize you can put original work on AO3, and you cannot promote original work or link original work. Like I'm selling my book, but you can put original work on AO3. So she changed, according to Rachel Reed, she changed the story of Scott and Kip to Captain America fan fiction and put it up on AO3. And when I was getting into Captain America fandom, specifically Steve and Bucky stuff, I read all the big fics. There's so many big like tentpole fan fictions in that fandom. I have friends, really, really good friends. Some of my best friends I've met through that fandom that have written some of the biggest fics in that fandom. And that was a fic that was getting circled. That was a fic that was very popular. And it read like Steve and Bucky fanfic. Bucky was the Kip and Steve was the Scott. And Scott in the book is blonde and a Chris Evans type. And Bucky and Kip kind of looks like Bucky. And his nickname is Skip. His nickname is Kip, right? So it's a whole thing. So it read very much like that. And it takes place in Brooklyn, all these different things. So she says that she reverse fanficked it. I'll take her at her word, but you read Game Changer and it reads like Steve Bucky fan fiction. It does. And that's not an insult. As someone who reads and has produced Steve and Bucky fan fiction, I love that stuff. So I don't understand this whole thing about like using it reads like fan fiction as a negative, but whatever. So that was back in like 2016 that I read that fic. So I'm like, reading that fic. It's fine. Keep going. So then I find out that she's making that into books and she wrote this whole series. And I went, oh, okay, I'll get to that sometime. I'm not a hockey romance girl. That's a big genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just never been my thing. But I know that it's huge. And I know that it is a very marketable genre of romance. And I just thought, you know what? Good for her. That's great. And she's far from the only person to do it. So I was like, all right, just, that's totally fine. So I forgot about it. And then last year I find out that this Canadian company is making Heated Rivalry as a series. And I thought, that's cool. Okay. Great. It'll be a cult thing. Like people on Tumblr will find it, get obsessed with it. There'll be GIFs all over the place, and it'll be something that a very niche group of people will love. That's awesome. And I saw a preview and I was like, this is great. Like this is going to be just cheesy and fun, and I'm loving this. So, and I knew that she had based it off of I'm not a hockey person, but she based it off of the rivalry between Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. And I know those names. So I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I hadn't watched it yet. They dropped. So then this is like some other thing. HBO Max picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to say 2 weeks before it aired, they secured the rights and were going to air it on HBO Max. So again, I'm thinking that's great. It's still going to be this cult thing, very much like there was this Norwegian show called Scam that came out like 10 years ago that was very cult, and there was this gay relationship on that show, and Tumblr picked it up and ate it up, you know. And I thought, good for them. This will be fun. And then it exploded. And I am hearing from all these people, all my friends going, this is an incredible show. You have to watch it. And I thought, well, I have HBO Max. I'll watch it at some point. And I'm seeing clips, and I really didn't watch it. I didn't watch it until episode 4 came out. And my friend Lindsay came over to my house and said, we're going to watch it together, because she had watched, actually, it was the day episode 5 came out. And she said, you have to watch the show. I am going to sit here and we're going to watch episodes 1 through 4. And I said, okay. And she actually has, I'll send it to you. She has a video of me reacting to it. And I just have my hands over my mouth. I'm just, because here's why the show works for me anyway. And I think the leads have said similar things. So everyone's like, why do women love Heated Rivalry? Why, which I'm like, I know why they love Heated Rivalry. It's because, and it's not because they like to watch boys kiss. I mean, some of it is, but it's not so much about these are hot guys that are doing hot, like that are doing hot guy things and are being hot, you know? It's a critique of patriarchy. That's what it is. I mean, there is patriarchy in the show because of the fact that Ilya is closeted and in Russia, and there's so many, when they're at the Olympics in Sochi, and Shane goes up to talk to Ilya, and Ilya is basically telling him to go away. And he says later, I can't do this here. I like my dad is in the police, my brother's in the police. I can't do this. Like, you cannot be near me at all. So that the real world does trickle in, but it's such a critique of heteronormativity and misogyny and patriarchal norms of masculinity. Um, I think women are, well, women, I think everybody is starved for that kind of media. I think that people are so starved for healthy depictions of masculinity because patriarchy hurts women and men. And I think that to have these men be vulnerable and to have these men say, I love you so much, I don't know what to do, and be very vulnerable and cry. And so it's, yes, you come into it and being like, whoa, they're having sex. This is crazy. But honestly, the sex isn't, anybody that's watched Queer as Folk and anybody that's watched any of the shows on Netflix or anything like that, it's not as explicit as any of the shows that I've seen before. I mean, I was seeing, Queer as Folk came out in 2000, and it's got stuff in there that's just as, if not more, explicit than this. Um, but that's a gateway into what ends up ultimately happening, which is a love story and the vulnerability. And so when episode 5 came out, I can't open my phone without seeing just so like Instagram stories and and then straight hockey dudes reacting to it. And it's the coolest thing I've ever seen because they're all into it and they're all rooting for these guys like they're I don't know, uh Dawson and Joey, or well, Joey and Casey really, but like they're rooting for them to be together, and when they get together, and the whole I'm coming to the cottage, at the I think the phrase I'm coming to the cottage is representational of I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm going to lean into something that I'm scared to lean into, and I'm not afraid to be with you anymore. That I think is what I'm coming to the cottage really means. It's I'm gonna open myself up to being loved and to love. Um, and that whole scene with Scott bringing Kip out onto the ice and the song "I'll Believe in Anything," and also any show that uses tattoos, all the things she said, is gonna be number one in my book. When that song kicked in, because I don't think people understand, because we're around the same age-ish. When all the things she said came out, it was such a big deal
Awesome.
and it was
Yeah.
so controversial. And because it was, I remember hearing that song for the first time and being like, oh, this is a cool, like Russian pop song. And then the bridge kicks in and it's like, I'm feeling for her what she's feeling for me. And when they stop and stare, don't worry me, blah, blah, blah. And you realize, oh, they're singing about each other. And it's not like a weird friendship. It's not friendship. This is about love and forbidden love, right? And I mean the whole thing with tattoo is a little weird because like they were dressed up as schoolgirls and it's not
Still of the 2000 early 2000s in that
very
way.
2000s. And I know that it was a bait, and I know that they weren't actually lesbians, and it's, whatever. It was a gag to get views. Whatever. Having that song at that moment with those characters, especially because Ilya is Russian, having those characters together and to hear that song, one of a place where it's just you and me, nobody else, so we can be free. I just I could not compute, Ryan. Like my brain couldn't compute what I was seeing. And I knew it was amazing, but the fact that everybody in the world seems to be obsessed with it is, I think it's a sign that we're just starved for this kind of story. We're just starved for love, and it's not even wholesome. It's not, I mean, some of it's very wholesome, but it's it's intimacy on a really deep level. And I read an article that was talking about how the absence of women makes it why women like it, because there's no room for violence against women. And the women in Heated Rivalry are amazing. And they're very good examples of allies. Like, you know, Elena and Maria and Svetlana are just incredible. And Rose as well. Like, Rose and Shane's whole breakup, quote unquote, is so funny and relatable. I've had that. I mean, I've not dated any gay guys, but I have had conversations where I've said, I remember meeting he's one of my dear, dear, dear friends. And I remember I found out he was gay because we realized we had previously a crush on the same guy. And I just went, that's incredible. And I just loved that her reaction was, this is hilarious. Like, of course you're gay. Like this. And not only that, but like, I'm still going to be your best friend and I'm going to support you. And Elena telling Kip to go down to the ice to see Scott and to just go. And the parents in this show, the fact that this show, I see so many comments from online from LGBTQ plus people saying that this is healing them, like this show didn't get me. The whole thing with Scott and Kip, I love them. I know everyone's obsessed with Shane and Ilya, but I love Scott and Kip. I just think that their relationship is so sweet. But the scene between Shane and his mom in episode 6, I was standing in my kitchen, tears are just running down my face. When he said to his mom, I want you to know that I really tried.
Oh, mm.
I like,
Yeah.
I feel like you're gonna have to screenshot this. I'm just because I'm just staring at you. I I that feeling, I know people who have said like, I tried so hard to be what you wanted me to be and I just couldn't do it. And I'm sorry that I couldn't be what you wanted me to be. And her response being, I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me. She doesn't say, I'm sorry if. She says, I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me. And that's why she was upset. And I just was like, and I came out of the kitchen and my husband was in the living room and he knew I was watching the show. And he was like, so how did it go? And I said, the mom said that she was sorry that she felt like she could. And he said that he tried. And it just, and he goes, I wish I was recording you right now because I looked like all of those people online that are like, and it's just, and I was inconsolable because of the honesty of it. Also, really beneficial that a gay guy directed and wrote this show. It like having a queer showrunner about in a show about queer people. There's an honesty there, and he says all the time. He said like in a lot of his interviews, I wanted to make a show where nobody dies at the end. Like, yes, there is that moment of, oh no, the parents saw and they left. There is that moment, but it gets resolved immediately. And they figure it all out and it ends on a really nice, like they're just driving off into the sunset together. And we get a season two, thank God. Because I immediately thought, well, there's no way we're getting a season two. We're just gonna end it. And it's gonna be this thing where they cancel another gay show and it's just going to be a thing that happens. And the fact that it got renewed for season two and they're contracted for 3 seasons, and also the the guys on the show are just so good, and they came out of nowhere. And I just think that they deserve everything that's going to come their way. I'd known Francois Arnault from a bunch of other stuff, but I hadn't known any of the other guys. And to see them go on this press tour and just be unapologetically themselves, um, is just delightful. Um, so it is not the most recent thing I've read, but I did read Game Changer and Heated Rivalry before I watched the show. And most of the big moments that are in the show were in the book. So I remember texting my friend Lindsay and saying, after I read the scene where um Ilya's confessing to Shane in Russian, and I knew the second he started saying things in Russian, because in the book, you don't know what he's saying in Russian at first. And then it flips to his perspective, and then you find out that he was saying, I'm in love with you, you know. And I texted my friend Lindsay, and I said, you're not ready for, if they do this right, this next episode, and it was right after before episode 5 came out. I said, if they do this right, this episode's gonna break people's brains. And it did. And I knew it. I knew going in. And that was great to know that they did it right. Um, and so I have not read the rest of the series because it's been sold out everywhere. And that's another thing that I could go on for a while about how Harlequin really dropped the ball on producing extra copies and doing book tie-ins and doing the promo that they should have done for it. I don't, and to be fair, I don't think they knew that this was going to blow up the way that it did.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in retrospect, of course it blew up the way that it did.
Right.
It's very Bridgerton-esque,
Right.
right? Bridgerton dropped on Christmas in 2020 and exploded because it was an example of, oh, this is another way to show romance. This is another, like, love stories don't have to be this weird power dynamic patriarchal thing. Um, and it's just delightful. And I love it so much. Um, and I just want Connor Story and Hudson Williams to get everything that they ever want, ever, because they're just sweet. Um, and they're so young and completely untrained for media, and it's so refreshing. Um, and I just love it.
18 minutes. That's actually a lot less than I thought it was going to be. So actually pretty good.
That or just going through every single episode and like the minutia of like the foot touching and like all of that stuff. I feel like if you're listening to this episode, you've watched Heated Rivalry and you understand. But I also think that having this kind of love story on screen and the fact that it was made for nothing
Mhm.
and is obliterating most of what Hollywood's putting out right now. I kind of feel bad for the cast of Stranger Things because this just came out of this just obliterated them. And
Listen,
I'm
we need a whole other podcast to talk about Stranger Things and what's happening in my house around Stranger Things. But
fascinated.
that is a
Fascinated.
whole other hour of oof.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to see how with not a big budget, with taxpayer dollars, with, and a Canadian show. And it's also really interesting, and this is not, I don't think this is a hot take, but I think this is an interesting take, is that um conservatives really aren't freaking out over Heated Rivalry.
No.
They're not being like, this is an abomination or whatever. And I saw something online that basically said, you know why they're not freaking out about Heated Rivalry? Because they're all watching it.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
nobody's freaking out about it because there's nothing to freak out about. I mean, yes, there is to freak like in a good way,
Yeah.
plenty to freak out about. But to the fact that there hasn't been this big, like, oh my God, like, how dare you? And it's also creating a conversation about the very real homophobia in the NHL.
Hmm.
And the fact that Hudson Williams has come out and said closeted professional athletes are reaching out to him online saying, this is my life.
Hmm.
I think that maybe I'm just pie in the sky, cockeyed optimist or whatever, but you can't tell me that there's no gay people in any of the professional sports leagues right now.
Right.
Like there's no out people. Well, that's in the male side of
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Many out female professional athletes. But you can't look at the thousands of men that play professional sports in this country and say there are none of them are even like a little bit
Hmm.
LGBTQ plus. You can't tell me that. And the fact that there's no active, I mean, there might be, I don't know. The fact that there's no prominent, really prominent out athlete, it just shows you we have so much farther to go. So I hope that moment in episode 5 when Scott pulled Kip onto the ice and kissed him on TV in front of this cheering crowd, I hope that that sends a message to closeted athletes like, I hope that you understand that yes, there's going to be backlash because people are terrible and there's lots of terrible people in the world, but this could be waiting for you. Like this feeling of just being yourself and not being afraid anymore. And I just really hope that that's true. Um, so I just hope that it's a sea change. I don't know, maybe that's me just being really optimistic, but I I love sports and I love this but I think that we could do better in so many different ways. And I just hope that this is a sign of better things.
And and that is Alysa Auriemma. You can read her work. I will put links to all of her books, including the new collection of stories that will be in the show notes for this. Alyssa, we've got so much more we got to talk about. We'll have to do this again later in the year just to do a bonus fandom episode
I know.
because Stranger Things. Oh my God.
I know. And you can follow me on Instagram at Ali Marcy Writes. It is my book, All Daughters Rise, is under my given name, Alysa Auriemma. But when I am starting to put out I am going to start publishing a series of romance novels, and those will be under my pen name, Ali Marcy. Most my fantasy work will still be under Alysa Auriemma. But if you're looking for me online, That is my public facing author account. That is also my name on Blue Sky. So if you would like, I just, I need to get better at updating Blue Sky. But if you would like to follow me on Blue Sky, that is my name as well.
All right. Well, as always, this was a hoot. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it.
And this is the other 51. We do this once a month where we talk to writers. Thank you for checking us out. Thank you for being here. Jen Moritz does our graphic design. Ellie Moritz did our theme music. I'm Brian, and I will talk to you next time.